Hey, what's up guys? Today we'll be reviewing the new Razer Blade Stealth, so that's their 13-inch Ultrabook that's now been updated with the GTX 1650 up from the MX 150 from last year. The best part is that they kept the same battery capacity and the same form factor with really good thermals. That's probably the part you're most interested in, so we'll start with the thermals and the performance. For a bit of context, this thing is the same thickness and weight as a 13-inch MacBook Pro, so 15 millimeters thick, and it weighs just 3 pounds. But running Battlefield 5 with the fans on max for half an hour measured 69 degrees on the CPU and 62 on the GPU. Part of that is the new 10th generation Ice Lake CPUs that are slightly more power efficient than the previous ones. They don't seem to have a factory underclock like the Blade 15 according to Hardware Monitor, but it doesn't seem like you'll need it anyway. Fans on idle are completely silent, the fans don't spin at all. Under load, they're reasonable with fans on auto. Maxed out, they're loud, but they don't scream like a vacuum cleaner. Performance in games is good. Keep in mind that it's running a low power Ultrabook CPU, so you're gonna get slightly lower frame rates compared to a 15-inch laptop with a full 45 watt 6-core CPU, but given the excellent thermals, you can probably overclock the GPU a little bit to squeeze some extra performance out. Esports and lighter games like Team Fortress 2 will run at 100 plus FPS. Older AAA games like Doom or GTA 5 can maintain 60 FPS at 1080p medium. 2018 and newer AAA games like Shadow of the Tomb Raider or Battlefield 5 will need settings dropped to low or medium to hit 60. Okay, getting to the actual laptop, the build and design remains the same as the one from earlier this year with the MX 150. It's still got the boxy shape, speaker grills beside the keyboard, thin bezels, matte black finish. The only thing that's changed, as far as I could tell, was the top finish on the lid of the device. It has a slightly rougher, kind of sandpaper-like finish that's very prone to leaving these gray marks after taking it out of my bag and when I brush my hand over it with a trail of dead skin. I like the feel of it, but I also care about my aesthetics, so I hope they can keep the texture and make it more resistant to catching dust. The hinge is a one-hand open with a lip at the front for easy opening. They've always had this. It's a nice touch. The screen has minimal wobble and it's very solid with little give, and the keyboard deck has some flex, but for such a thin laptop, it's very rigid overall. The keyboard and trackpad both remain the same as last year. The keys have short key travel, but the actuation force, keycap sizing, layout, and feedback are all okay. With some other keyboards, I actually have trouble typing at fast speeds, but this one I didn't have any issues with, so I'll say it's good, but it just needs more key travel. The backlighting is still a single zone, so only one solid color at a time, which is unfortunate on such an expensive laptop. Oh, and the non-standard right shift key placement. It doesn't bother me because of the way that I type, but it's something to consider if you're someone who hits the shift and question mark key with your right hand. The trackpad is very nicely sized, and I remember when they switched to the boxy design, the trackpad required way more force to activate than the previous model, but now it's much better. It no longer tires out my finger after long use. The frosted glass surface is smooth, button clicks are much quieter than other trackpads, and the tracking is very accurate. This is one of the best trackpads of any Windows laptop. You have the option of either a 1080p or 4K screen, both are 60Hz, and the model that I'm reviewing is the matte 1080p screen. It's also the one that I would recommend because you get better battery life, and that's going to be pretty important in a moment. The past few generations of the Blade Stealth had decent panels, mostly lacking in brightness, but this one is significantly brighter and more color accurate. It's got 370 nits of brightness, perfect color calibration out of the box, contrast is decent, I consider 1000 to 1 to be good, and 1500 to 1 to be really good for an IPS panel. It also supports Windows Hello Face Unlock with the 720p webcam. The speakers are still top-mounted beside the keyboard, always great to see after listening to nearly every other laptop's bottom-firing drivers. These are loud, good detail, but it lacks bass, and more importantly, there's a very noticeable static or distortion in the lower mid-range, so around 330 to 450 Hz. The speakers start to rattle and produce a loud static. Aside from that, all it's really missing is a dedicated subwoofer like the MacBook Pros. On the left and right, you'll find one USB-C and one USB-A port. One of the USB-C ports supports 4 lanes of Thunderbolt 3, but I'm not sure which side it's on because I don't have anything to test with. You also have a headphone jack on the left, and both USB-C ports supports charging, which is really convenient. With a Torx T5 screwdriver, you can pop off the bottom panel. There aren't any clips, which makes it very simple and easy to get inside. The RAM is soldered on, so all you got is the SSD and the Intel AX201 for Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.0. The SSD is still the Samsung PM981, and it's one of the fastest OEM drives on the market. Inside is a 53 watt-hour battery that's getting me about 6 hours of battery life, closer to 5.5 if I have the brightness set to 90% with 2 tabs in Firefox, no video playback, and Visual Studio. And for this reason, I would recommend against going with the 4K panel because 6 hours is already on the short side for an Ultrabook. For context, the previous model, I believe, got around 7 hours, so this is noticeably worse than the previous generation. And that's the thing, right? You pick this laptop over other 13-inch laptops like the Surface Book 2 and the Alienware 13, both with dedicated GPUs, the Alienware with a GTX 1060, because it's thin and light. But it's not really portable if you need to be near a wall outlet with a charger to make it through a full 8-hour workday. So the Blade Stealth as a whole, I enjoyed using, but recommending it is a bit harder than that. It's very expensive, starts at $1,800 for the 1080p panel and a GTX 1650, but they're also one of the only companies that's selling a 13-inch Ultrabook with this kind of performance and thermals. However, if you don't need the faster GPU, I think the base model is a fair competitor to the MacBook Pro and XPS 13. This one does the best in terms of performance and upgradability. The MacBook Pro has the best screen, speakers, and trackpad by far of these three, and the XPS 13 being the middle of the bunch in all areas. It's a good all-around laptop. And that's the end of this video. I'd love to hear what you think of this laptop and if you think this is worth it, and I'll see you guys next time.